The wine glass left a perfect ring on the exhibition catalog. I watched the red circle spread across the face of my latest discovery, a haunting portrait series that would open next month. Marcus didn't notice. He never did. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Another one of your little photo books? He barely glanced up from his phone, thumb scrolling through what I knew were texts from her. I'd memorized the pattern by now. The slight upturn of his lips, the way his shoulders relaxed. You know, babe, at some point you have to accept that Instagram filters aren't the same as real art. I said nothing. Just traced the rim of my own glass. Sparkling water. Always sparkling water when I needed my mind sharp. The kitchen of our brownstone felt smaller lately, or maybe Marcus just took up more space with his condescension. I'm serious, Elena. He finally looked up, and I met his eyes with the expression I'd perfected over 18 months. Soft, yielding, just interested enough to seem engaged. This photography thing, it's been 3 years. Don't you think it's time to be realistic? My mother was asking again when you'd go back to teaching. Teaching. The job I'd quit the week after our wedding, exactly as planned. The carefully constructed cover story that made me seem small, manageable, harmless. Maybe you're right, I said quietly, watching him nod in satisfaction. Inside, I was calculating. The Vivian Ashford application had come through that morning. My assistant Rebecca had flagged it immediately, not because the portfolio was exceptional, though it showed technical competence. She flagged it because she recognized the woman from the photos I'd shown her 2 months ago. The woman Marcus met every Tuesday and Thursday at the Meridian Hotel. The woman who had no idea that the prestigious Ashford Gallery she was so desperate to join belonged to the wife she was helping to betray. You could always help out at my office, Marcus continued, magnanimous now in what he thought was victory. We need someone to organize the client files. Nothing complicated, but it would give you something to do. I smiled. Let him think I was considering it. Let him believe that Elena Castellano, former high school art teacher, devoted wife, amateur photographer with delusions of grandeur, might actually file his papers like a good little woman who'd finally accepted her limitations. He had no idea that Elena Castellano had never taught anywhere. That the woman he'd married had spent her 20s building something extraordinary under a name he'd never thought to Google. That Vivian Ashford, the reclusive gallery owner whose spaces in New York, London, and Tokyo had launched 100 careers, was currently watching him check his phone again, that telltale smile playing at his lips. I need to run out, he said, already standing. Client emergency. On a Sunday? It's that merger I told you about. Very sensitive. He kissed the top of my head, distracted. Don't wait up. The door closed behind him. I counted to 60, then pulled out my phone. The tracker I'd installed on his car 3 months ago showed him heading south toward the Meridian, punctual as ever. I opened my laptop and pulled up Vivian Chen's application again. 28 years old, self-taught, working as a freelance creative consultant, which apparently meant having enough free time for afternoon hotel visits. Her portfolio showed promise buried under obvious technique. Street photography mostly, candid moments that tried too hard to seem unstudied. And there, in her artist statement, the line that had made Rebecca laugh out loud. I believe in capturing the raw truth of human connection, the intimate moments that reveal who we really are. The raw truth. How poetic. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My phone buzzed. Rebecca. Did you see the references she listed? I scrolled down. 3 names I recognized from Marcus's firm. All people who'd been to our house for dinner, who'd smiled at me while I served drinks and played the gracious hostess. People who clearly had no idea their colleague was sleeping with the boss. Or maybe they did know. Maybe that was why Vivienne felt confident enough to use them as references for a gallery application. She'd learned from Marcus that Elena Castellano was someone you didn't need to worry about. Someone small. Someone harmless. I saw. I typed back. Schedule her interview for Thursday afternoon. 3 o'clock. You're sure about this? Was I sure? I'd been sure since the morning I found the hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. Sure since I hired the investigator. Sure since I'd watched from my car as Marcus and Vivian walked into the Meridian for the first time, his hand possessive on her lower back, her laugh carrying across the parking lot. I'd been sure for 18 months. Every smile I'd given him. Every time I'd played small and uncertain and grateful for his attention. Every single moment had been building to this. I'm sure, I sent back. And Rebecca? Pull her complete file. Everything. Where she banks, where she shops, who she knows. I want to understand exactly who we're dealing with. Already on it, I'll have it by tomorrow. This was why Rebecca had been with me for 6 years, since before the gallery was even called Ashford. She understood that success in the art world wasn't just about having an eye for talent, it was about information, strategy. Knowing exactly how to position every piece, every artist, every moment to maximum effect. And right now, I needed to position Vivienne Chen very carefully. I poured another glass of water and moved to my home office, the room Marcus thought was my photography hobby space, with its prints on the wall and my camera equipment arranged just so. He'd wandered in exactly once, made a comment about the cost of toys, and never looked closely enough to realize that the photographs on my walls weren't mine. They were all pieces from my galleries, a rotating exhibition that I changed quarterly, living with the work before deciding on final placement. The print above my desk right now was from Kenji Tanaka's Breakthrough series, the one that had sold for $2 million at auction last year. Marcus had walked past it 100 times without recognition. I unlocked my desk drawer and pulled out the leather portfolio. My real work. The photographs I'd been taking for 3 years, since the day I realized my marriage was becoming something I needed to document. Marcus at our kitchen table, lit by early morning light, already on his phone before coffee. The composition was perfect. The way the steam from his mug created a barrier between us, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. Marcus at our anniversary dinner, raising his glass to me, but his eyes were distant. Already planning his exit to check messages. Marcus asleep in our bed, turned away from me. This one was my favorite. Something about the vulnerability of sleep juxtaposed with the wall he'd built between us even in unconsciousness. It was titled The Space Between in my mind. I'd never shown these to anyone. They existed in this liminal space, too personal to be art, too carefully composed to be mere documentation. But lately, I'd been thinking about them differently. About how the best revenge isn't rage, it's transformation. Taking pain and making something so beautiful from it that the world stops to look. My phone buzzed again. This time it was the gallery security system. Someone had just used the after-hours code to enter the New York location. I pulled up the camera feed and smiled. Harrison Chen, our lead curator, right on schedule. He'd texted earlier saying he wanted to adjust the lighting on the new installation before tomorrow's private viewing. Harrison was like that, meticulous to the point of obsession. It was why I'd hired him. I watched him move through the main gallery space, making tiny adjustments to the spots, stepping back, considering. The current exhibition was a retrospective of women photographers who'd worked under pseudonyms. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed a third time. Marcus. Meeting running late. Definitely don't wait up. I stared at the message. The lies had become so casual, so automatic. Did he even remember what he was supposedly doing tonight? Did it matter to him at all that I might actually believe him? I typed back, "No problem. I'm going to work on some photos anyway. Love you." Let him think I was in my little hobby room, playing with my camera. Let him picture me small and occupied and thoroughly deceived. The truth was so much more interesting. I opened a new folder on my laptop and created a file, Vivienne Chen, Exhibition Proposal. Then I started writing. By Monday morning, I had a complete dossier on Vivienne Chen that would have impressed a government agency. Rebecca had outdone herself. Bank statements showing a lifestyle somewhat beyond what freelance creative consulting should provide. A rental history that included 2 evictions and 1 outstanding judgment. A pattern of credit card debt that suggested someone living on expectations rather than reality, and most interestingly, a social media presence that painted her as an emerging artist, struggling against a system that didn't recognize true talent. Her Instagram was a carefully curated mix of her photography, inspirational quotes about following your dreams, and just enough strategic vulnerability to seem authentic. "The universe rewards those who dare to be seen," read one caption under a self-portrait. She was beautiful in that calculated way some women achieve, not naturally stunning, but expertly assembled. Good lighting, better angles, the kind of beauty that required effort and maintenance. 3 posts showed her at gallery openings around the city. Never the Ashford, I noticed. We'd probably been too prestigious for her to crash, but she'd been to the Marlowe, the Foster Gallery, and twice to the Chelsea Contemporary Space. In each photo, she was dressed in black, holding wine, looking serious and artistic. In one photo from the Chelsea Space, I recognized someone in the background, Thomas Whitmore, one of our scouts. The ones we sent to other galleries to spot talent before it peaked. I texted Thomas, "The woman in the black dress at the Chelsea opening last month. What do you remember about her?" His response came within minutes. "Pushy. Cornered me for 20 minutes about her work. Wanted an introduction to you. I told her to apply through proper channels. Why?" She did. "Interview Thursday." "Oh." A pause. "Want me to sit in?" "No. I'll handle this one personally." Thomas wouldn't push. He knew I occasionally took interviews myself when something interested me. He just didn't know what interested me about Vivienne Chen had nothing to do with her photography. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Marcus emerged from the bedroom at 9, unusually late for him. He looked tired, and I felt a flash of something that might have been satisfaction. Let his double life exhaust him. "Rough night?" I asked, playing concerned. Client was a nightmare. Wanted to renegotiate the entire deal at midnight. He poured himself coffee, didn't meet my eyes. "I need to go in early today. Make up for lost time." "On a Monday?" "It's that kind of week." He grabbed a banana from the counter. "Actually, I'll probably be late most of this week. End of quarter push." End of quarter. That was new. Usually, his lies had more creativity. I wondered if Vivienne was pressuring him for more time, if the affair was reaching that critical point where the mistress started demanding proof of commitment. "I'll miss you," I said softly. He kissed my cheek, distracted. "You could always come by the office for lunch one day. Surprise me." I smiled. We both knew I never would. Elena Castellano didn't make waves. She understood that her husband was important and busy. She kept herself occupied with her little hobbies. "Maybe Thursday," I said. "If you're free around 3? Let me check my calendar." He pulled out his phone, scrolled. "Thursday's packed, actually. How about Friday?" Of course Thursday was packed. He'd need to be available in case Vivienne called after her interview, in case she wanted to celebrate or commiserate or simply exist in his presence like she had the right to. "Friday sounds perfect," I said. After he left, I sat in the sudden silence of our brownstone. This place had cost $3 million, purchased through a shell corporation I'd set up years before I ever met Marcus. He thought we'd bought it together, that his salary as a senior acquisitions manager had made it possible. He'd never asked too many questions about the exact financing. Men like Marcus never did when the answer might complicate their narrative of being the provider. I walked through the rooms, seeing them differently now. This wasn't our home. It had never been our home. It was a stage. A carefully constructed set where I'd been playing a role for 3 years, waiting for exactly the right moment to step out of character. That moment was coming. I drove to the gallery around noon, parking in my reserved spot in the underground garage, the one marked V. Ashford. Walking through the back entrance, I passed Maya, our gallery manager, who was training a new docent. "Ms. Ashford?" Maya said, surprise in her voice. "I didn't know you were coming in today." "Impromptu visit. Is Harrison around?" "In his office." "Should I let him know you're here?" "I'll surprise him." I liked the looks on their faces when I showed up unannounced, that mixture of excitement and slight panic. It kept everyone sharp. Harrison's office was organized chaos, catalogs and slides and digital tablets all arranged in a system only he understood. He looked up when I knocked, and his face broke into a genuine smile. "V, what brings you to the mortal realm?" Harrison was one of 3 people who called me V. Rebecca was another. The third was my lawyer, Diane, who'd been with me since the beginning. Everyone else called me Miss Ashford, and I preferred it that way. Distance was useful in this business. "Wanted to check on the installation. It's perfect. You'll love it." He stood, already heading toward the door. "Come see." We walked through the gallery together, and I felt the familiar sense of rightness that came from being in this space. The Ashford Gallery had been a dream I'd nurtured since childhood, sitting in my parents' cramped apartment in Queens, flipping through art books from the library. My mother had been a seamstress, my father a taxi driver. They'd scrimped and saved to send me to a decent school, but college was always going to be a reach. Instead, I'd gotten lucky. A scholarship to NYU, a work-study job at a small gallery in Soho, and a professor who'd seen something in me, not as an artist, but as someone who understood how to look at art, how to find the extraordinary in the overlooked. I'd opened my first tiny space in Bushwick at 24, with money saved from years of 70-hour weeks and an investor who took a chance on an unknown. By 28, I'd moved to Chelsea. By 32, I was opening in London. Tokyo came at 35. I was 37 now, and the Ashford Gallery was synonymous with discovering the next big thing. We'd launched careers, set auction records, changed the conversation about what photography could be, and through it all, I'd remained invisible. Vivienne Ashford existed only in emails and rare video calls where the lighting was always strategically dim. I'd given occasional interviews to prestigious magazines, always by phone, always carefully controlled. The mystery was part of the brand, the reclusive genius with the golden eye. It had all been deliberate, calculated, a choice I'd made after watching too many successful women in the art world become the story instead of their galleries. I wanted the work to speak. I wanted the artists to shine. And I wanted the freedom to move through the world as someone else when it suited me. Harrison was explaining something about the lighting ratios, but I was only half listening. My mind was on Thursday, on Vivienne Chen sitting across from me, not knowing who I was, not knowing that every word she said would be adding to a calculation I'd been running for 18 months. "V?" Harrison was looking at me with concern. "You okay? You seem distracted." "Just thinking about the new interview on Thursday." "The Chen application?" "I saw that come through. She's technically competent but nothing special. I was going to have Maya handle it." "No," I said. "I want this one." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "I never did initial interviews anymore. That was what I had staff for." "Something about her work interests me," I said. which wasn't entirely a lie. I was very interested in Vivian Chen, just not in her photography. Your instinct is usually right, Harrison said. Want me to pull some comparisons? See how she stacks up against current trends? That would be helpful. And Harrison, let's keep this one quiet. No mentions on social media. No adding her to the applicant database until after I've met with her. He nodded, unbothered. I occasionally asked for discretion with applicants who came from wealthy families or had famous connections. He assumed this was another case of handling someone sensitive. He had no idea how sensitive this particular case was. I spent another hour at the gallery, meeting with Maya about upcoming exhibitions, reviewing budget proposals, checking in with our London location via video call. This was my real life. This work. These spaces. The careful cultivation of art and artists, and moments that would outlive all of us. Marcus's world of corporate acquisitions and deal-making seemed so small by comparison, so temporary. He spent his days helping companies buy and sell each other, creating nothing, building nothing, just moving pieces around a board for people who already had too much, and yet he thought he was the successful one, the important one, the one whose career mattered while mine was just a cute hobby I developed to fill my empty days. The delusion was almost admirable in its completeness. I left the gallery around 4, driving back to Brooklyn through traffic that gave me time to think. My phone rang as I crossed the bridge. Rebecca. Got something interesting, she said without preamble. Vivian Chen used to work at Marcus's firm. I nearly swerved. What? 3 years ago. She was an administrative assistant for 6 months before she was let go. No official reason listed, but I talked to someone who was there. Office rumor was she'd gotten involved with a senior manager and it ended badly. 3 years ago, right before I met Marcus. Do we know who the manager was? Still digging, but what are the odds it wasn't him? I pulled over into a parking lot, hands suddenly unsteady. What else? After she left the firm, she filed for unemployment, listed Marcus Castellano as her supervisor. There it was. The piece I hadn't known I was missing. This wasn't just an affair. It was a rekindling. A return to something that had started before I was even in the picture. Which meant everything I'd thought about their relationship was wrong. This wasn't Marcus being tempted by someone new. This was Marcus going back to someone familiar. Someone he'd wanted before he wanted me. Rebecca, I need you to find out everything about that 6 months. Why she was really fired. What happened between them. Everything. Already on it. I'll have a full report by tomorrow. I sat in my car, watching the traffic flow past, trying to reframe everything I thought I knew. Had Marcus married me as a consolation prize? Had he been thinking about her the whole time? Or had he genuinely moved on, only to fall back into old patterns when she reappeared? Did it even matter? No. What mattered was that on Thursday, Vivian Chen would walk into my gallery thinking she was interviewing for a career opportunity. She'd sit across from me, probably wearing black, probably very serious about her art. She'd talk about her vision and her passion and her commitment to the craft, and I would listen. I would take notes. I would ask thoughtful questions, and then I would make a decision about exactly how to destroy them both. But not yet. Not in anger. Not in the white-hot fury that wanted to text Marcus right now and burn everything down. No. I would do this the way I did everything else. Carefully, strategically. With the same meticulous planning that had built my gallery into an institution. I would do this as art. Tuesday passed in a blur of normal life that felt increasingly surreal. I met my friend Patricia for lunch, one of the few people who'd known me before Marcus, back when I was still openly building my career. She'd stayed silent about my real identity, understanding without me having to explain why I'd chosen to hide it from my husband. "How's the photography going?" she asked with a knowing smile. We were at a small cafe in the village, far from anywhere Marcus or his people might be. "Interesting?" I said. "Very interesting." She studied my face. Patricia had been my roommate in my mid-20s, had watched me grind through the early years of the gallery. She was one of the only people who truly understood the scope of what I'd built. "That's your dangerous voice," she said. "What's happening?" I told her. Not everything, but enough. About the affair, about Vivian's application, about the interview I'd scheduled. Patricia's eyes widened. "Elena, V, whatever name you're using today, that's... what? Either brilliant or completely insane." She sipped her wine. "Maybe both. I need to see her up close. Need to understand what he sees in her. You need to understand why you're still playing this game." Patricia leaned forward. "You have all the power here. The money, the career, the leverage. You could divorce him tomorrow and take everything. Why are you doing this?" It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself for months. "Because I want him to understand," I said finally. "I want him to realize exactly what he threw away. Not just me, though yes, that too. But the life he could have had if he'd been honest. If he'd seen me." "Revenge. Clarity." Patricia laughed. "Same thing. Just prettier." Maybe she was right. Maybe this was just revenge dressed up in the language of art and strategy. But I'd never claimed to be above human emotions. I'd just learned how to channel them productively. We finished lunch, and I headed back home, where I spent the afternoon actually working on my photography. The images I'd been taking of Marcus had evolved into something larger, a series about invisible labor, about the women who build worlds while men take credit, about the performance of smallness. I'd been photographing other subjects too over the past year. Women in the city, going about their lives. A CEO disguised as an assistant. A surgeon shopping for groceries in scrubs, invisible to everyone around her. A tech founder walking her dog, unknown despite her company's billion-dollar valuation. Women who'd learned, like me, that sometimes power was safest when it was hidden. The series was called Unseen, and I'd been thinking about showing it. Not as Elena Castellano, amateur photographer. As V. Ashford, gallery owner stepping into the role of artist for the first time. But not yet. Not until this other thing was finished. Marcus came home around 9, earlier than expected. I was in the living room, laptop open, editing photos. "Hey," he said, and something in his voice was different. Softer. "Sorry I've been so absent lately." I looked up. He was standing in the doorway, still in his coat, looking almost vulnerable. "It's okay. I know you're busy." "It's not okay." He crossed to the couch, sat next to me. "I've been thinking about us, about how much time I spend at work. You deserve better." My heart was racing, but I kept my expression neutral. "What brought this on?" "I don't know. Just feeling like I've been taking you for granted." He took my hand. "You're always here, always supportive." I haven't been appreciating that enough. It was the first genuine thing he'd said to me in months, and all I could think was, she's pulling away. Vivian's putting pressure on him, and this is his guilt talking. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "Let's do something this weekend. Just us. Maybe drive upstate? Get away from the city?" "That sounds nice." We sat there for a moment, his hand in mine, and I felt a strange doubling. Part of me was still his wife, still the woman who'd loved him once. That part wanted to believe this moment was real, that something could be salvaged. But the other part, the part that had been documenting this slow dissolution for 18 months, knew better. This wasn't Marcus having a revelation. This was Marcus trying to keep all his pieces on the board. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." Both truths and both lies, somehow, at the same time. Wednesday, Rebecca sent me the full file on Vivian Chen's time at Marcus's firm. It was damning in the way only bureaucratic documentation could be. She'd started as a temp, been hired full-time, and then been let go 6 months later with a vague notation about professional conduct concerns. But the real story was in the emails Rebecca had managed to obtain from a former employee. Flirtatious messages between Vivian and Marcus. Nothing explicit, but the tone was unmistakable. Then a gap of 2 weeks. Then an exit interview where Vivian had signed an NDA in exchange for 3 months severance. Someone had paid her to leave quietly. I called Rebecca. Was Marcus married when this happened? Divorced. Final papers came through about a month before Vivian started working there. So he'd been single, technically free to date whoever he wanted, but obviously the company had frowned on the relationship, and rather than fight for her, Marcus had let her go, had signed off on her termination, had chosen his career over her, which meant she had her own reasons for being in this affair, her own anger, her own agenda. This was getting more complicated than I'd anticipated. "One more thing," Rebecca said. I looked into her photography career. She's had exactly one exhibition 2 years ago at a tiny space in Williamsburg that closed 6 months later. Nothing sold. No reviews. Since then, she's been trying to break into the scene with no success. So she's desperate. Professionally desperate, romantically complicated, and financially unstable. It's a hell of a combination. We hung up, and I sat with the information. Tomorrow, this woman would sit across from me, not knowing any of this. She'd present her portfolio and her artist statement, and her carefully curated vision of herself as someone worthy of the Ashford Gallery. And I would decide what to do with her. The night before the interview, I couldn't sleep. Marcus was next to me, breathing deeply, oblivious to my wakefulness. I got up carefully, went to my office and pulled up Vivian's portfolio again. This time, I looked at it differently. Not as the wronged wife, but as a curator. What was she actually trying to say with these images? The street photography showed technical skill but lacked point of view. The compositions were balanced but not brave. Everything was competent and nothing was essential. It was the work of someone who understood the rules but hadn't figured out how to break them meaningfully. But there was one series that caught my attention. Self-portraits, tucked at the end of the portfolio. In them, Vivian was never quite in focus. Shot in mirrors, in reflective surfaces, in shadows. Images where she was present but obscured. The artist's statement for this series read, "In the age of constant visibility, I explore the power of remaining just out of reach." These images ask, what happens when we refuse to be fully seen? I stared at those words for a long time. What happens when we refuse to be fully seen? She had no idea she was asking that question to someone who'd built an empire on that exact principle. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, I would see Vivian Chen clearly, and she would continue to see nothing at all. I went back to bed. This time, sleep came easily. I dreamed of galleries and photographs, and women whose faces I couldn't quite make out, always just slightly out of focus, always just beyond recognition. When I woke up Thursday morning, Marcus was already gone. He'd left a note on the counter. "Early meeting, dinner tonight?" I texted back. "Can't." "Have a thing at 3? Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow works." I smiled. He really thought I'd bought the early meeting. Really believed his lies were still working. The confidence of it was almost impressive. I dressed carefully for the interview. Not as V. Ashford. Vivian had never seen photos of me, and the few images that existed online were deliberately obscured. Instead, I dressed as Elena Castellano might if she were trying to look professional. A simple black dress, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. Approachable, unthreatening, forgettable. At the gallery, I briefed Maya on the plan. I'm conducting the 3 o'clock interview in my office. No interruptions unless it's an emergency. The Chen interview? I thought Harrison was handling that. Change of plans. And Maya, if anyone asks about Ms. Chen after her interview, we haven't made any decisions yet. She nodded, curious but professional. I'd been running this gallery long enough that my staff knew not to push when I was being cryptic. I spent the morning in meetings, but my mind was elsewhere, running through possible scenarios, planning responses, thinking about what I wanted from this encounter. Truth? Confrontation? Revelation? Or was it simpler than that? Did I just want to look into the eyes of the woman who'd been sleeping with my husband and see what she saw when she looked back? At 2:55, Maya buzzed my office. Ms. Chen is here. Give her 5 minutes, then send her up. I used those 5 minutes to center myself, to remember that I held all the power here, that this woman had no idea who I really was, that I could end her aspirations with a single word. The knowledge was intoxicating. At exactly 3 there was a knock on my door. Come in, I said. And Vivian Chen walked into my office, portfolio in hand, eyes bright with hope, completely unaware that the woman behind the desk was about to change everything. She was prettier in person. That was my first traitorous thought as Vivian Chen settled into the chair across from my desk. The photographs hadn't quite captured the porcelain quality of her skin, or the way her dark hair caught the light from the gallery windows. She was nervous, good hands clasped around her portfolio, shoulders slightly hunched, trying to make herself smaller in the presence of what she thought was power. If only she knew. Ms. Chen, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for seeing me, Ms. She paused, realizing she didn't know my name. You can call me Elena. The irony of using my real name was delicious. I'm conducting interviews for Ms. Ashford today. Oh. Disappointment flickered across her face. I'd hoped to meet her personally. Ms. Ashford rarely conducts initial interviews herself, but I can assure you, your application will reach her directly. Every word was technically true. Shall we look at your work? She opened her portfolio with the careful reverence people reserved for things they desperately needed to succeed. I'd seen this gesture 1,000 times, artists laying their souls bare, hoping to be chosen. Usually it moved me. Today, I felt only cold calculation. This is my street photography series, Vivian began. I'm interested in capturing authentic moments of human connection in urban spaces. The way strangers interact, the small kindnesses that go unnoticed. I held up a hand. Before we discuss technique, tell me why you want to show at the Ashford. She blinked, thrown by the interruption. Well, it's one of the most prestigious galleries in the world. Every photographer dreams of. That's what everyone says. I leaned back in my chair. I'm asking why you, specifically, need this space. What makes your work essential to our mission? A flash of something crossed her face. Frustration, maybe, or fear. She was used to people being impressed by her ambition, not challenging it. I think my work speaks to the invisibility of certain experiences, she said, recovering. Particularly women's experiences, the way we're taught to make ourselves smaller, to exist in the margins while others take up space. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. This woman, who was sleeping with someone else's husband, wanted to lecture me about women's invisibility. Interesting, I said. And in your personal life, do you practice what you photograph? Do you make yourself visible, or do you prefer the margins? Her eyes narrowed slightly. I'm not sure I understand the question. Your artist statement mentions the power of remaining just out of reach. I'm curious if that's a philosophical stance or a personal preference. Both, I suppose. She was defensive now, sensing danger but not understanding its source. I think there's strength in mystery, in not giving everything away. Like hiding in plain sight? Yes, exactly. I opened her portfolio and began examining the images with exaggerated care. She'd organized them chronologically, and I could see her technical improvement over time. The early work was derivative, clearly influenced by other photographers she'd studied, but the recent pieces showed more confidence. These are competent, I said finally, but competence isn't enough for the Ashford. We need vision, necessity, work that couldn't exist without this particular artist creating it. I looked up at her. What makes you necessary, Miss Chen? She flinched. It was the question every artist feared, and she had no good answer. I could see her scrambling, trying to find words that would satisfy me. I've struggled, she said. I've been underestimated, overlooked. I've had to fight for every opportunity while watching less talented people succeed, because they had the right connections, the right last name, the right partner? I suggested quietly. Her face went pale. Excuse me? I'm simply observing that success in the art world often depends on relationships. Who you know, who supports you, who opens doors. I closed her portfolio. Tell me about your support system, Ms. Chen. Who believes in your work? I. She was floundering now. I have friends in the industry, colleagues who've encouraged me. No partner? No significant other championing your career? That's a rather personal question. Art is personal. I find that an artist's intimate relationships often inform their work in unexpected ways. I smiled. For instance, those self-portraits at the end of your portfolio, the ones where you're always slightly out of focus. They suggest someone who's comfortable being hidden, someone who's used to being a secret. The silence stretched between us. Vivian's hands were trembling slightly. I should clarify, I said, my voice still pleasant, still professional. I'm not just evaluating your photography today. I'm evaluating you, your integrity, your judgment, your understanding of how your choices reflect on any institution that represents you. I don't understand what you're implying. Don't you? I pulled out my phone and opened a folder I'd prepared that morning. Let me show you something. I turned the screen toward her. It was a photograph, one of mine from my Unseen series. It showed a woman sitting in a hotel bar, face partially obscured, but clearly waiting for someone. The image was artful, the lighting dramatic. It could have been anyone, except it wasn't. It was her. At the Meridian Hotel. 6 weeks ago. This is from a project I've been working on, I said. About hidden lives, secret selves, the gap between who we pretend to be and who we actually are. Vivian's face had gone from pale to red. You photographed me without my consent? It's a public space. No consent needed. I scrolled to the next image. Marcus walking through the hotel lobby checking his phone. Then another. The two of them in the parking lot. His hand on her back. Never quite touching in the photos, but the intimacy was obvious. Who are you? She whispered. I told you. My name is Elena. I let it hang there, watching as understanding slowly dawned. Elena. Castellano? The very same. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. This is insane. You can't. This is. Sit down, Ms. Chen. Something in my voice made her obey. She sank back into the chair, looking trapped. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. You're going to listen to what I have to say, and then you're going to make a choice. A real one, not like the ones you've been making for the past 18 months. I should leave. You should. But you won't. Because you need to know how much I know. You need to understand what I'm capable of doing with this information. I closed my phone. So sit. Listen. And for once in this entire sordid situation, be honest. She stayed seated. I could see her mind working, trying to find an angle, a way out. It was almost familiar. The same calculating expression Marcus wore when he was crafting a lie. How long have you known? She asked finally. About the affair? 18 months. About your history with Marcus? Since Monday. Then why the game? Why bring me here? Because I needed to see you. Needed to understand what you thought gave you the right to my husband. I leaned forward. Tell me, Vivienne, was it just sex? Or did you actually believe he'd leave me for you? She looked away. You don't know anything about us. I know he fired you 3 years ago rather than fight for your relationship. I know he married me 6 months after you left. I know he's been lying to both of us for a year and a half. I paused. What I don't know is why you came back. Why you let him pull you into this again when you already knew how it would end. Because I loved him, she said, and there was real pain in her voice. Because when he called me, when he said he'd made a mistake, that he'd thought about me every day, I wanted to believe him. And now? Now I don't know what I believe. I studied her. The anger was still there, burning cold in my chest. But something else too, a kind of recognition. She'd been used just as much as I had. Marcus had made us both into fools. He's not going to leave me, I said. You know that, right? Men like Marcus don't leave. They collect. They compartmentalize. You're not the future. You're just a separate file folder in his perfectly organized life. Then why haven't you left him? It was a fair question. One I'd been asking myself for months. Because I needed to wait for the right moment, I said. And that moment is now. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out 2 envelopes. One was addressed to Vivienne, the other to Marcus. This is yours, I said, sliding the first envelope across the desk. Inside, you'll find documentation of every time Marcus has lied to you, every promise he made that he had no intention of keeping, every moment where he chose his comfort over your dignity. There's also information about the NDA you signed when you left his firm, specifically the clause that voids it if the company knowingly misrepresented the circumstances of your termination. She stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Why are you giving me this? Because you deserve to know the truth. All of it. Not the version Marcus told you. Not the version you told yourself. The actual truth. I tapped the second envelope. This is Marcus's. It contains divorce papers, financial statements showing that everything he thinks we own together is actually mine, and documentation of his affair that will make any contested proceedings very brief. You're divorcing him. I've been preparing to divorce him since I found the first hotel receipt. I've just been waiting for the right moment to make it hurt. Vivienne opened her envelope with shaking hands. I watched her face as she read through the documents Rebecca had prepared. Saw the moment each new revelation landed. Marcus had told her I was cold, that I didn't understand him, that he stayed out of obligation, not love. He'd told her they'd start fresh once he figured out how to leave without losing everything in the divorce. He'd told her so many lies. The apartment he promised you, I said quietly. The one he said we'd buy together once he sorted things out? That's my building. I own it through an investment company. He was going to set you up in a property I owned. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. And the job opportunity he mentioned? The one at that tech startup his friend was running? That friend is my former business school classmate. Marcus asked him to hire you as a favor. He was going to take credit for it, make you grateful. Stop, she whispered. Please stop. Why? You wanted to be seen, didn't you? That's what your art statement said. Well, here you are, fully visible. Every lie, every manipulation, every moment where you were a prop in his ego rather than a person he actually cared about. I stood and walked to the window, looking down at the Chelsea street below. People walked past the gallery every day, never knowing what happened inside these walls, never knowing the stories that played out in this space. I'm not giving you this information to hurt you, I said, still facing the window. I'm giving it to you because I know what it's like to be underestimated. To have people think you're less than you are because it suits their narrative. You're the mysterious Vivian Ashford. Her voice was flat. You're one of the most powerful people in the art world. And you thought I was a failed teacher with a camera hobby. Marcus told you that, didn't he? Probably laughed about it. My sad little Instagram posts, my amateur equipment, my delusions of talent. He said, she stopped. Say it. He said you were sweet, that you tried hard but didn't have any real vision, that he felt guilty because you looked at him like he'd hung the moon. I turned back to face her. I've been photographing him for 3 years, documenting every lie, every dismissal, every moment where he made himself big by making me small. I have hundreds of images, a complete record of our marriage as it crumbled. I paused. That work, my real work, is what I've been doing while he thought I was playing at being an artist. Are you going to show it? Yes. It's called Unseen. It opens next month, including the photographs I took of you and Marcus. I saw her face change. Don't worry. Your face isn't visible. Neither is his. That's not what the work is about. It's about the architecture of deception, the way people occupy space when they think no one's really looking. Vivian was crying now, silently, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. I'm sorry, she said. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I don't want your apology. I want you to leave my husband alone. I want you to take the information in that envelope and decide what to do with it. And I want you to think very carefully about the choices that brought you here. What about the gallery? My application? I almost laughed. She was still thinking about her career. Your work isn't right for the Ashford, I said, not unkindly. It's competent, but it lacks point of view. You're technically skilled, but you haven't figured out what you actually want to say. I picked up her portfolio. However, there's a smaller gallery in Dumbo. The owner owes me a favor. They showcase emerging photographers, and they're actually better suited to your current level. I can make an introduction. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Why would you do that? Because your biggest problem isn't your photography. It's your judgment about men. And that's not something that should destroy your career. I held out her portfolio. What Marcus did to both of us isn't your fault. What you do next is. She took the portfolio with shaking hands. I don't understand you. You don't have to. You just have to leave my office, leave my marriage, and build a life that doesn't depend on men who lie to you. Vivian stood, clutching her materials. She looked younger suddenly, stripped of the polish she'd worn into the interview. He really doesn't love me, does he? I don't think Marcus knows how to love anyone except himself. I walked to the door and opened it. But that's his problem now, not yours, not mine. She paused in the doorway. The exhibition, the one with the photos of us. When does it open? March 15th. You're welcome to attend. Anonymously, of course. Will he be there? No, I said. By then, he'll have other concerns. After she left, I stood alone in my office for a long time. The afternoon light was fading, casting long shadows across the gallery floors below. I could see Maya through the window, talking to a collector about a piece in the current exhibition. This was my world, this space, this work. These quiet moments where art and commerce and human story intersected. Marcus had never been part of it, had never even wanted to be. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. Diane, it's time. Serve the papers tonight. His office is best. Make it public, make it professional, make it impossible for him to spin. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. We discussed logistics for 20 minutes. Diane had been preparing for this moment as long as I had. The paperwork was airtight, the financial statements clear, the evidence irrefutable. By tomorrow, Marcus would know. His colleagues would know. His parents would know. Everyone who'd ever heard him dismiss my hobby photography would know exactly who I was and what I'd built. And me? I'd be free. I called Rebecca next. The interview happened. She knows everything. And I think she'll disappear from his life quietly, but keep monitoring just in case. Want me to release the statement to the press? The statement. The one announcing that reclusive gallery owner V. Ashford would be showing her own work for the first time. The one that included my full biography, my real name, my actual accomplishments. Tomorrow, I said. Let's give Marcus one last night of ignorance. That evening, I went home to our brownstone. I cooked dinner, pasta with the sauce Marcus claimed to love, though he usually just pushed it around his plate while scrolling through his phone. I set the table with our good plates, opened a bottle of wine. When he arrived at 7, he looked surprised. What's all this? Just dinner. I know I've been distracted with my photography lately. Thought we could have a nice evening. He kissed my cheek, pleased. This is great, babe. Really great. We sat across from each other and I watched him eat. Watched him check his phone 3 times during the meal. Watched him be the man he'd always been. Half present, half concerned with something else. Never quite able to give his full attention to anything that didn't directly benefit him. How was your day? I asked. Crazy. The merger's heating up. Lots of late nights ahead. Of course. How was yours? Interesting. I sipped my wine. I had an interview at 3. Oh yeah? How'd it go? Really well, actually. Very revealing. He nodded, already losing interest. That's good. Maybe something will come of it. I think something definitely will. After dinner, he retreated to the living room with his laptop. I cleaned up, then joined him, curling up on the opposite end of the couch with a book. We sat like that for 2 hours, together but separate, the way we'd spent most of our marriage. At 10, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw the slight change in his expression. Tension, guilt. It wasn't Vivienne. She'd probably gone radio silent after our meeting, trying to process everything. This was likely work. Or maybe another woman. At this point, it almost didn't matter. I should get some sleep, I said, standing. Big day tomorrow. Yeah, me too. He barely looked up. I went to our bedroom, my bedroom really, in my house that he'd always thought was ours, and lay down in the dark. Tomorrow, divorce papers would be served at his office. Tomorrow, the art world would learn that Vivienne Ashford was Elena Castellano. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, for these last few hours, I let myself be still. Let myself exist in the space between who I'd been pretending to be and who I actually was. It felt like waiting backstage before a performance. That held breath before the curtain rises. I fell asleep planning my exhibition. The photographs of Marcus would anchor the series, but they'd be surrounded by the images of other women. All of us existing in plain sight. All of us unseen by people who'd decided we were invisible. The show would be beautiful. It would be devastating. It would be true. And that was the only revenge that mattered. The papers were served at 2 p.m. the next day. Diane texted me a photo. Marcus, sitting at his desk in his corner office, staring at the divorce petition like it was written in a foreign language. By 2:30, he was calling me. I didn't answer. By 3, he was at the house, pounding on the door. I'd had the locks changed that morning. Professional movers were scheduled for 6 to pack his belongings into storage. Elena, he was shouting through the door. What the hell is going on? These papers, they're insane. They say you own everything, that you've owned everything. That's not possible. We bought this house together. I opened the door, stood there looking at him, this man I'd married, this stranger I'd lived with. We didn't buy anything together, Marcus. I bought it. I've been paying for your life for 3 years. That's ridiculous. You're a teacher. You take photos as a hobby. Where would you get that kind of money? I'm not a teacher. I've never been a teacher. He stared at me. What? Google me. Go ahead. Vivian Ashford. I watched his face as he pulled out his phone, watched the confusion turn to disbelief, turn to something like fear as he read. The gallery. The exhibitions. The Forbes profile I'd given 2 years ago. The estimated net worth. This is some kind of mistake. No mistake. That's me. That's always been me. You just never bothered to look. But you said you were a consultant. I said I'd quit teaching to freelance. You assumed the rest. You never asked questions because you liked the idea of being the successful one, the provider, the important one. He was scrolling frantically through his phone now, reading about the gallery, about the artists I'd discovered, about the empire I'd built. Why? He finally asked. Why lie to me? Why not tell me who you were? Because I wanted to see who you were, and you showed me. Every day, every dismissive comment, every time you mocked my hobby, you showed me exactly who you are. This is insane. You're insane. No, I'm just done. I started to close the door. Your things will be in storage by tonight. The address is in the paperwork. Don't come back here. Elena, wait. We can fix this. I know I haven't been perfect, but it's not about perfect, it's about respect. And you've never respected me. Not once. Is this about Vivian? His voice was sharp now. She told you, didn't she? I knew she would. But it didn't mean anything. It was just, don't. I held up my hand. I'm not doing this. I'm not listening to you minimize and excuse and lie. It's over. Accept it. I closed the door, locked it, listened to him shout for another 5 minutes before he finally left. Then I poured myself a glass of water, sat at my kitchen counter, and watched the sunset through my windows. My house, my life, my future. It felt like breathing for the first time in years. The exhibition opened on March 15th to a crowd I could barely process. Critics, collectors, artists, people from the industry I'd shaped for over a decade. They came to see Vivian Ashford's first show as an artist. They came to see what the mysterious gallery owner had been hiding all this time. What they found was unseen. The main gallery space was divided into sections. The first showed successful women in moments of invisibility, the CEO buying coffee, unrecognized, the surgeon in scrubs, the tech founder walking her dog, all of them existing in plain sight while the world looked past them. The second section was titled The Marriage. It showed Marcus, sleeping, working, laughing with friends, existing in our home. In each image, I was present but absent, a shadow, a reflection, a figure just out of frame. The composition made it clear. I was documenting him while he never saw me at all. The final section was called The Woman in the Mirror. Self-portraits, but not like Vivian Chen's. In mine, I was sharp, clear, visible. My face, my body, my truth captured in unflinching detail. These were the photos I'd taken after I decided to leave, after I chose to be seen. The reviews were extraordinary. The Times called it a searing examination of gender, power, and the price of making yourself small. Art Forum said it was the most important photographic work of the decade. Patricia came to the opening, found me standing in the corner, watching people examine my marriage on the walls. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said, and meant it. Marcus didn't come. I hadn't expected him to. But later, through mutual acquaintances, I heard he'd seen the coverage, had understood finally what he'd lost. Not me, specifically, but the idea of me. The truth he'd been too arrogant to see. I heard he moved to Chicago for a different job. Heard the affair with Vivian had ended the day I served the papers. Heard he was telling people his ex-wife had been secretly rich and crazy, trying to rewrite history to make himself the victim. I didn't care. He was a footnote now. A chapter in a story I'd already moved past. Vivienne attended the opening, as I knew she would. She stood in front of one of the hotel photographs for a long time, her face obscured, her body language readable only to someone who knew the context. When she finally approached me, she seemed different. Smaller but somehow more solid, like she'd shed something heavy. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the introduction to the Dumbo Gallery. They're going to show my work next year." "You're welcome." "And for—" she gestured at the exhibition. "For this. For making it about more than just him." "It was always about more than him," I said. "He just didn't know it." She nodded and moved on. We were never going to be friends, but we'd both survived Marcus Castellano, and there was something in that shared survival that felt like enough. 6 months later, I sold the brownstone. Too many memories. Too much Marcus. I bought a loft in Tribally with floor-to-ceiling windows and space for a proper darkroom. I dated occasionally, but wasn't in a hurry. After years of hiding, I was enjoying being fully visible, being myself without translation or explanation. The gallery continued to thrive. Unseen traveled to London and Tokyo, drawing crowds at each location. I did interviews now, showing my face, telling my story. The mystique of V. Ashford had been replaced by something better. The reality of Elena Castellano. I was developing a new series about transformation, about the space between who we pretend to be and who we actually are. It was going to be called Becoming, and I knew it would be even better than Unseen, because I'd learned something through this whole terrible, transformative experience. The most powerful act isn't revenge. It's reclamation. Taking back your story. Refusing to be small. One evening, alone in my loft, editing photos, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Elena? It's Marcus." I almost hung up, but curiosity won. "What do you want?" I wanted to say I'm sorry. For all of it. For not seeing you. For not appreciating what I had." "Okay." A long pause. "Is that all you're going to say? What else is there?" "You're sorry. I heard you. It doesn't change anything. I've been following your career, the exhibitions, the press. You're everywhere now." "I was always everywhere. You just weren't looking." "I know. That's what I'm sorry about." I looked out my window at the city lights, thought about the woman I'd been when I married him, already successful but willing to hide it, willing to make herself small to avoid being hurt. "Marcus, I don't forgive you. I don't think I ever will. But I'm grateful to you." "Grateful?" "You taught me what happens when you hide your truth. When you let someone else define your worth. You taught me by being exactly who you are." I paused. "So thank you. For being such a perfect villain in my origin story." He laughed, bitter. "Is that all I am now? A story you tell?" "That's all you ever were." I hung up before he could respond. Then I turned back to my work. To my real life. To the woman I'd become by refusing to stay invisible. The photos on my screen showed the city at dawn, women walking to work, to home, to wherever they needed to be. All of them carrying stories no one knew. All of them more than they seemed. I captured them in the early light, these unseen women. And in capturing them, I honored what I'd learned. That sometimes the most radical thing you can do is stop hiding. Stop performing smallness. Stop letting others decide your worth. Just exist. Fully, powerfully, truthfully. And let the world catch up. The end. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.